Hey, welcome back and congratulations on making it this far into the course. This lesson is about the event object. We've seen it a little bit before when we were talking about this, and we're going to cover it in more detail in this lesson because this is really important. The event target is the property of the event interface, and it's a reference to the object that dispatched the event. So whatever item you've clicked on and you've added the event listener on, we can get that event information. And by default, some browsers will actually pass the event object directly within the function, such as Chrome will do that. Firefox is a little bit different, so it doesn't by default pass it in. So you're going to see that there's differences in the way that the code gets handled. So the best way to go about it is to pass in the event object and then use that event target whenever that element gets clicked. And you can see it in action when you add an event listener and you take a closer look at what's being output, and you take the event object by E, and then you can see the different event types. So you can see what type triggered it, and then there's also the event target. So let's take a closer look. So first of all, let's select an element, and we can use that same button that we used the last time, so change background color. Now, of course, obviously it doesn't have to be a button. You can use any element that you want, and they're all going to work the same way. And refresh and just make sure that we do have that object. So adding an event listener, we're going to add a click and just an anonymous function. And this is where we're passing in the event. So console log out the event. Actually, we should do console directory. So we see that it's a mouse event that's triggered this event. And let's see what information we can capture in here. So we've got all of the position, so the client position, when that event took place. We have the page position of where that event object is. We have the type of event. So if it's a mouse event, it'll be different. And in this case, it was a click event, of course. So we've got the event type there. And we also have the event target. So this is the one that we want to look at because this is going to we also have source elements. So these are the same in this case. And to work across all browsers, the best one to use is the event target. And this is actually going to give us access to the element that triggered the event. And you can see all of the information of that element is contained in there. So you can use the event target to output the element that triggered the event. And then, of course, you can do more things with it and find out more information about it. So if we take our event target, that's going to be always that element that created the event. And this is also the same as when we saw this before, we were using this. And you can see it's the same thing that gets returned back there. So if you're applying any type of changes to it, then this is how you can do that. You can always get that event target information and then utilize that within your code. So we do have a challenge in this lesson, of course, and this is to update our challenge 2 so that you can apply the color changing on different elements. So add a bunch of different elements to your page, and then we're going to add event listeners to those elements. And depending on what element gets clicked, that's the one we're going to be applying that random color change to. And you can use that same random color function that we generated in the earlier lesson. So here you can pause the video, and I'll walk you through the solution coming up. I'll also give you a quick sneak peek at the code. We've got a bunch of spans here. So how about we add some additional options into those spans and select those as our elements that we're going to use. We can call it spans, or you could add in some default divs if you want. So query selector, and in this case it's query selector all, as we're selecting all of the elements that have a tag of span. And let's also add back in those curly brackets and the rounded brackets. So refresh and make sure that we do have the spans. So we've got our node list of all the different spans. And in this case, we can do spans for each. We're going to loop through all the different elements. So selecting the element and then also the index if we need to use it. And as we loop through, let's first make sure we've got all of the elements properly in the console. So output the elements into the console. So we do have all of them. Let's update some of the style properties to them, giving them a padding value. And also I want to update the background color to them, or the border. So I know this wasn't part of the exercise, but this is going to make it easier for us to spot where the spans start and where the spans end. So now we've got a bunch of spans, and let's take the style and we'll display block for the spans. Let's see what that looks like. So now we've got them all as clear different spaces. They're bigger now, so we can a lot easier see them when we set their background colors. So now let's make them clickable. So as we're looping through, we can add in the ability to click on those spans. So let's take the element, add event listener. In this case, we'll use a click, then an anonymous function. And we're going to pass in that event object as E within the anonymous function. So whenever they get clicked, we can get the E information in the console. So each one of those, we see when they get clicked, we get the event information. And so that means we can also target them. So now in this format, there's actually a number of different ways that we can select that element. So we can do E target. There's also console log L because we've got the element object that we're referencing here as we're looping through each one of those. And we can also do this. So we've got lots of options. And they're all going to be the same thing. Let me make this bigger and I'll clear this. And as you see, we click one of them and it's all referencing that same object. So there's a number of options on how we can select and we can apply properties to this element. So next thing that we need to do is we need to just update that background color. And because this is a lesson on event target, let's select that one to apply the style background color. And then we need to recreate our random color function. So let's do that as well. We'll create a function for random, taking in a number value. And then for this, we're going to return random in order to generate the random number. And we're going to multiply it by num plus 1. And so this is going to give us a value. So increment num plus 1. So if we're passing in 255, it's going to bring it to 256. But the math floor is going to bring it back down to 0. So it's going to return back a number from 0 to 255. So that's why we're adding in that plus 1. So you don't always need to do that. It depends on the type of functionality that you're looking for. So that's just a return on that. And next we need to create another one for the random color. And this one actually doesn't need to have anything in there because we're just simply returning back a string value. So we've got our RG, and then we're concatenating that random, comma separate these so we get the right format, concatenating it all together, and again, comma separating, and then closing off the rounded bracket. And that's going to be the value that we can return. So now whenever we click these, you see we've got random colors affecting any one of the spans that we have on the page. So if we add in new spans, they're going to also have that same effect. So coming up next, we're going to track key press and key press events. So that's still to come.